Hello, this is Mr. B from B-Town Mathematics, and today we're going to look at a short video here and learn how to operate on positive and negative numbers. And when we say operate on, or we mention the word operations, we're talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing positive and negative numbers. Today we're going to just start with integers in our examples and in our models, and then later we're going to move on to rational numbers like fractions and decimals. So looking at simple examples and models, we're going to be able to discover and understand the rules behind operating on positive and negative numbers. When you know the rules and you practice them, you will be able to solve more complicated problems involving fractions, decimals, and multiple operations. This video right here will only focus on addition. We need to get our addition rules firmly in our minds and practice them. That will make subtraction so much easier. You should have in front of you a sheet that looks like this right here. I'll zoom out. You will be taking notes on this sheet as we move through these examples and these models. Now, if you do not have this sheet, then I do have a Google Slides document where you can, show it to you here, you can type in the text boxes and type your answers in and take some notes. I will refer to this to help you through this. However, it is better to have a paper copy where you write on it and you keep a paper copy because your brain will remember more and understand better if your hands are actually doing the writing. It's better to write than it is to type because your brain will remember it better. But I will refer back to this to kind of show you and make sure that you know how to fill these out and how to move the models and create the models so that you'll have a document that you can refer back to. Our first thing we want to fill in is right here. We're going to want to write the title in. This is addition. So type in addition or write in addition. I'm going to type because it's much easier for me. So there we go. So let's look at some models here first. Create some models in these boxes just so we can start to see what are the rules that govern adding positive and negatives together. So we're going to start with super simple problems here. 8 plus 5, I know that's really difficult. However, these will help us understand. Now keep in mind that's the objective, is to understand the rules, not just get the answer, because I realize that in these problems, many of you will just be able to get the answer in your head, and I don't want you to ignore the rules or the models and just say, well, I know how to do this, I got the answer. I'm going to ignore the rest. The point is to know the rule of it so that we can do more complicated problems involving fractions and decimals and multiple operations. So here's our first model here. We're going to do two different types of models. One type of model we're going to use, I don't know what to call it. I call it the war model. And the other one is a number line model here. So let's start off with the war model. 8 plus 5. That's 8 positive, that's a positive 8 and a positive 5. Both are positive numbers. So we're going to draw on one side here 8 positive signs and on the other side 5 positive signs. When we add things together, we are literally putting them together. We're pushing them together into the same spot. And so we can see here that we have 8 positives here and 5 positives here. What happens when they come together? Let's take a look at a tool here that I can use to help explore this concept. So we're going to put 8 positives, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 5 over here, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now what do we have when we move them together? I mean, literally we are just adding them. We are putting them together in the same spot. And you can see pretty easily we have 13 positive symbols right here, and we can check our answers. I'm going to check that by clicking on that. Yes, 13 is our answer. So we're going to go ahead and just record our answer. Okay, simple enough. Let's take a look at our second example here. This is -4 plus -5, so let's put 4 negative symbols in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and nothing fancy, just drawing negative signs right here. So what do we have when we have 4 negatives and 5 negatives added together? And here we can see I've got 4 negatives, and I also have 5 negatives added together in the same position. And what do we have? -9. That's right, 9 negatives. Okay, very simple, pretty simple to understand and to see how those answers work out. So -4 plus -5 equals -9. We can see some development of some answers and rules that we can create starting to begin here. So let's just take a look at how these look using number lines. So our little doctor friend here says, I wonder how these look using number lines. So on your paper, we're going to begin with the number 8, positive 8. So let me change my color here. We're going to put a point on our starting point, number 8, right there. And we're going to add a positive 5. That means we're going to move in the positive direction 5 jumps. So starting here, we're just going to draw an arrow in the positive direction going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we end up right there at 13. And this corresponds with the answer we got in our first model, 13. Let's do the same thing here. We're starting at -4, so go ahead and draw yours out. And then we are moving, we're adding, so we're moving in the negative direction, -5. So -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we stop right there at -9. So we can easily see our answer. So let's start thinking about the rule. What did we do to find our answers here? What do we do with the 8 and the 5? What do we do with a -4 and a -5 to get our answers? I noticed that there are 2 parts to our answers. There's a sign right here, positive and negative, and there's also the number part or the absolute value part of it right here. So we might want to think, what do we do to get the number part, and what do we do to figure out, is it going to be a positive number or a negative number? So let's go ahead and let's write some rules out here. When the signs are the same, because you'll notice in both of our examples, we had 2 positive numbers added here and 2 negative numbers here. So when the signs are the same, put that in really big. Yes, write that really big. And put a comma here too. I forgot to put a comma there. When the signs are the same, what did we do to the absolute values to find the number part? Yes, we will add those numbers together. Just the absolute values. Look at the 4 and the 5. 4 and 5 is 9, 8 and 5 is 13. So we add the absolute values and then we use the sign of the 2 numbers. That's pretty simple. We got it. Okay. Well, what happens if you were following along in the Google Doc right here? Then you'll notice that in our models right here, to put a whole bunch of plus signs or negative symbols in here, you can click on this. I would click the control button and then click and then drag and let go, and you'll create a copy of it. So each time it's control, click, drag, control, click, drag, and you'll make a copy. That didn't work that time. Control, click, drag, and you'll be able to make copies of those symbols. And of course down here, we also can create a shape. We can say insert a shape. You want to put like a circle, and starting at the 8, you want to insert a shape on the 8, just like that. And you can fill it in too. Here's the fill button. You can make that red. And you can draw arrows. Over here is a line tool. You can click on arrow and then move that, just kind of create an arrow. Just like we did on our paper, you can create one here as well. So you can see that it lands or it ends at the 13. And then you could do the same thing here. Fill in our answers by clicking on these boxes. Now it's a little bit tougher on these Google Sheets if you're using these, or the Google Slides right here. If you end up moving this, like they move around and chaos can happen. So here's your best friend. Control Z is the undo button. You can hit Control and the Z button and it will undo all of your mistakes. All right, let's continue on with the back side of your paper right here. So what if the signs are different? So that's the other possible case right here where we have a negative number and a positive number being added together. Well, let's show our models right here. So you're going to keep track in your space, and I'm going to do the model. Okay, here I'll go ahead and begin by putting 4 negative signs there and 9 positive signs. What happens when we add positive and negative numbers together? So let's just look at what happens with a single negative and a single positive. When we put them together, you'll notice that my tool here joined them together. They create a 0 pair, so they equal 0. 1 positive and 1 negative. Negative 1 and a positive 1 equals 0. So if we combine these together, all the negatives and the positives, then we'll see 0 pairs begin to form. So these 4 pairs right here all equal 0. And what's left over when we're finished? This will reveal 5. 5 is left over. 5 and nothing else. These are 0. These are 5 positives. So our answer to our first problem is positive 5. And you please keep track in this as well. You create your own model here. And also here, let's try 8 plus negative 5. So here we have 8 plus negative 5. We can begin to pair up positive and negatives. They will create zeros. You notice we're changing these now. There's only 3 negatives and there are 6 positives. As we put the positives and the negatives together, we're combining them. We're creating pairs of zeros. So this all equals 0, and here we have 3 positives left over. So in this case, 3 is our answer. We can also use a number line. So let's do the same thing we did in the previous examples. Here we have negative 4. We're going to begin here, and we're adding a positive 9, so we're moving in the positive direction 9 jumps. That's 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right here is where we stop, and we're stopping at the 5. Similarly, we can begin at 8. So we'll have a starting point here, and we're moving in the negative direction because we're adding a negative number. 5 jumps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we land on positive 3. So notice that we're doing something a little bit different when the signs are different. What are we doing with the number parts, the 4 and the 9 to get a 5, or the 8 and a 5 to get a 3? Let's go ahead and write our notes in here. When the signs are different, put a comma right there. When the signs are different, what are we doing with the numbers to get the number parts? Well, we're not adding this time. This time we are subtracting. So we're going to subtract. So we're going to subtract the absolute values and then use the sign of the greater absolute value. So in this case, we subtracted 9 minus 4 to get 5. And because 9 has a greater absolute value and it is positive, our answer is going to be positive. And in this case also, the positive number has a greater absolute value, so the answer is going to also be positive. So let's take a look at an example where we might have a different answer here. So you try this one. Let me just put some numbers down here. Let's try negative 12. Use your rules that we've learned and find our answer. And our answer is, now if you needed more time, just hit pause and you can have as much time as you want. But our answer here, we see that 2 numbers have the same signs, so we're going to add our absolute values. 12 plus 15 is 27. And because they are the same signs, we're going to use that sign in our answer. Negative 12 plus negative 15 is negative 27. How about this problem here? Negative 20 plus 8. Go ahead and pause, find your answer. Okay, so we have 2 different signs. One is negative, one is positive, so we're going to subtract those 2. 20 minus 8, that'll give us 12. And because 20 has a greater absolute value, it's further from 0, we're going to use this symbol. That means it's going to continue to be negative. And if we were to imagine the war scenario where we have 20 negatives and 8 positives, we could simply say, who's going to win that? Of course, there are more negatives, so there will be more negatives left over. Or you can think of a number line. Negative 20 is further away from 0, so the positive 8 is not going to get us to the 0. We're going to remain in the negative area. Okay, those are the rules for adding integers, positive and negative numbers. They also work, of course, for fractions and decimals. You will use the same rules. You will either add them and then use that sign, or you're going to subtract them and use the sign of whichever has the highest absolute value. That's it. Thank you.